Welcome to another edition of Ask Isaiah. It's your host Isaiah Rhodes. And on today's episode, we're going to be recapping day 2 of the 2018 Big East tournament in Madison Square Garden. Now, I covered two games. I covered Villanova versus Marquette and Butler versus Seton Hall. But in the earlier games, Xavier defeated St. John's 88-60, and Providence outlasted Creighton 72-68 in an OT thriller. Now, in Marquette and Villanova's game, the score wasn't necessarily indicative of how competitive the game was. Villanova overwhelmed Marquette in the second half. 94-70 was the final score, but Marcus Howard and Mikal Bridges put on a shooting clinic in the first half, both going at it, putting the score extremely close, 41-34 in Villanova's favor. But in the second half, Jalen Brunson, Omari Spellman, and a myriad of other players really complemented what Bridges was already doing in the first half, and they overwhelmed Marquette. Now, big shout out to Andrew Rousey, who put on a big show in this tournament so far. He went out with 22 points. He's a senior, so you have to respect what he gave to Marquette University, and he's a gamer. I'm sure he'll play professionally somewhere. He's that good, or he might go into coaching. I'm not sure, but I just want to give much respect to what he was able to do for Marquette, especially over these last couple of games against DePaul. He really came up big down the stretch to really save that game for Marquette. And unfortunately, against Villanova and that high-powered offense, they weren't able to compete with Villanova's pedigree. But with that said, the game score wasn't indicative of how competitive the game actually was. The last game of the night, Butler versus Seton Hall, let me tell you, that is the epitome of March Madness. Butler was able to outlast Seton Hall 75-74. Big shout out to Kadeem Carrington. I'm a huge fan of his game. In the first half, he played an exceptional game, 11 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. In the second half, Butler was able to get to the offensive glass, and that really changed the trajectory of the game. And in doing so, that was the last drop of what Seton Hall wasn't able to do that really put them over the top in terms of the game. I mentioned Kadeem Carrington. On Butler's side, you have Kamar Baldwin, who played exceptionally well, career high 32 points. And in periods of the first half, he was the player that really carried the offense for Butler when they weren't able to find points. The way he played in the first half was very reminiscent of how Shamari Pons played in the first half against Georgetown, when St. John's didn't necessarily have the complements in terms of scoring. But in the second half, once the other players were able to sprinkle in points and really take pressure off Shamari, you saw the game for St. John's open up. That's what happened with Butler. In the first half, Seton Hall led 43-35, and they were getting everything they wanted, especially from Kadeem Carrington. You saw a great contribution from Desi Rodriguez, who was dealing with an ankle injury. He missed about 2 weeks worth of basketball, but he came in, gave them some solid minutes, and he really gave them an extra punch in that first half. In the second half, Kamar Baldwin, I mentioned his scoring prowess in the first half. He was able to carry them in stretches in the second half, but then you saw other players come in like Sean McDermott, Doug McDermott's brother. He gave him some key points. Also, got the box score right here. Also, Tyler Wideman, who actually got the offensive rebound to steal the game for Butler. He gave them some key rebounds down the stretch. He had a total of 10 points. Those 4 rebounds were valuable. Then you also have to give a shout out to Kellen Martin. Kellen Martin, 7 of 20 from the floor, but he ended with 17 points. And those 17 points, along with Kamar Bowman's scoring prowess throughout the entire game, really put Butler over the top. Fortunately, Seton Hall fell short, but they should get a seed in the NCAA tournament. They finished the season 21-11, and with that, they should have an opportunity to dance. Now, tonight's matchups, you have 2 games, one at 6:30, one at 9 o'clock. That will be Xavier versus Providence at 6:30, and then the nightcap will be Villanova versus Butler. Both games should be entertaining. I'm more excited to look at Villanova and Butler. I want to see how Kamar Baldwin can respond after such a great performance last night. And that's the thing about March Madness. It's a quick turnover. It's heavy scouting. Not necessarily, you probably don't get a lot of practice time in because of so much effort you had to give the night before. So I just think you'll probably see a tight first half, but in the second half, that's when you'll see the flow open up. And that's what we've been seeing, especially with that Butler Seton Hall game. It was so tight early in terms of how teams were scoring, and it was more one-sided. But in the second half, you saw both teams going at it, especially as Butler was making their run to try to take that lead. Too many times you saw Seton Hall eke out some free throws to just keep it a 3-point game, a 4-point game. But then you'll see a barrage from Baldwin or McDermott to try to swing the game. And that's the beauty of March Madness at this time. Both teams just really wanting to do everything they can to survive and advance. So tonight, you have those two games. I'll be covering both, so I have a recap of both. I want to give a huge shout out to Jay Wright and Villanova in this respect. They have won 13 of the last 14 Big East tournament games. So that just goes to show you the longevity that Jay Wright has had and the sustained excellence that he's had in the Big East showcases the standard that is necessary to achieve at this high level. So I'm going to give a shout out to Jay Wright and Villanova in that respect. Tonight, as I mentioned, the two games that will be played, I will have my recap for Day 3, 2018 Big East Tournament. This is Ask Isaiah, your host Isaiah Rose, and we'll be back tomorrow.